Well, hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about a relatively complex subject, and that's stoves and mess kits. The mess kits aren't complicated, but the stoves can be complicated. And what I won't be talking about is actually cooking. The food preparation and food cooking. That's a trail routine series that maybe I'll get to someday. So now is the time for me to kind of repeat the fair warning that I am reviewing equipment that I use. These are not recommendations. There's actually some stove types that I'm considering moving on to, and I won't be reviewing them, just mentioning them in passing in this video because I haven't actually used them. There's a lot of stove types. I've only used a few. So ways of cooking, stove types. Well, stoveless isn't a stove type. It's a zero. It's nothing. But you can go stoveless. You can either eat cold food, do what's called cold soaking, or build campfires. There are alcohol burning stoves. We kind of classify stoves by their stove type. So alcohol burning is one. There's the isobutane, propane, butane types. If you're familiar with chemistry, you get methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, hexane, septane, octane. You're starting to get into hydrocarbons that are pretty big and complex. Octane, of course, being a major component of gasoline. There are other liquid fuel stoves that use either kerosene or white gas, and then there's solid fuel. Now the X's and check marks here are not recommendations or anything. It's just I'm going to be talking about the ones with the green check marks because those are the ones that I have used. The others I haven't used. I'll just mention them in passing. So first, there's two ways to go stoveless. One is just plain don't cook. Just eat cold food on the trail. Probably do that for 1 or 2 nights. Well, anybody can do it for any amount of time, but boy, I don't like going out and hiking without having a warm meal most of the nights. But there are, like I had mentioned earlier, people who do cold soak, and to me that's it's just nasty. It takes a long time. There are some foods that you cannot rehydrate with cold soaking, but a lot of them you can. You just have to have a lot of patience. Or you can use campfires. Build a good old-fashioned wooden, wood-based campfire underneath a grate. Now, when I went on my first long-distance trip back in 1979, I did use a little aluminum grate, and that was my cook stove, and I built fires underneath it. I would not recommend doing that today with the increase in the trail use, especially the Appalachian Trail. A lot of jurisdictions don't want you building open fires. Usually if there's a fire ring there, something established in a lot of rocks, rocks around it forming a ring, you can do it, but in some cases you just can't. And plus with overuse, if there's a lot of fires been built, there's not going to be wood available. So I would say don't plan on building fires. You can do it in a pinch if you have to, but it shouldn't be your primary mechanism for cooking. Now, as an aside, a lot of people just build campfires because that's what you do, just because. I ran into a couple in New York or New Jersey, I forget where it was, I think it was New York, and they were out there, it was their first overnight, and they had a campfire in front of their tent, and I talked to them, and I thought this was great. People going out and learning how to camp. They said they'd never camped before, they'd never done this overnight thing before, but they wanted to learn what it took, and that's great going into it, especially with the attitude that, hey, this is something I'm doing new, I'm not going to be great at it right away, but I want to learn. That's fantastic. But I asked them why they had the fire, and they said, I thought that's what you do. You build the campfire with the camp, and I don't see it. Now, that's not to say that I never have. I built a campfire. I think I can only remember doing it once in the past 20 years, but I did do it, and we have a picture of it here. You can do it for the warmth, you can do it for the ambiance. It can be done, and this particular one was in Connecticut. Okay, so in general, the stove fuels each offer advantages and disadvantages. They operate well over different operating temperature ranges. There are dead weight concerns when you have liquid fuels or gaseous fuels. You have to have a container for it. Their availability can make a difference. A lot of them are easily available. Usually you can't bring them on public transportation, so if you're going to fly to your destination, you have to plan on acquiring your fuel locally. And here's an example of the dead weight that comes along with the container. This is actually a container commonly used with something called a jet boil. That's one of those butane, propane, isobutane devices that I have never used. I'm thinking of using it because I do get jealous because it's very popular on the trail, and I see people boiling up water a lot faster than I can with my rig. And if you're, excuse me, if you're a type who likes to have coffee in the morning, something like this is very convenient. But I'm not going to show you a picture of the jet boil or anything like that until I acquire one myself, and then maybe I'll do a separate video on that. Okay, so the one of the types of stoves I have used is called a MSR. That's mountain. What is it? I have it on here. Mountain Safety Research stove that uses either kerosene or white gas. You see a picture of it here. It's like you're having a little gas burner with you out on a trail, which is pretty cool. I actually found that it's better for groups on group hikes. To use it properly, you have to do a preheat of the fuel. In other words, you have to pump a little bit of fuel into this little I don't know, catch basin underneath it. You've got to light that with a match. Pressurize the fuel bottle, and then once it's pressurized and it starts coming out, the preheating of the line and everything will cause it to burn like a gas stove. There are fuel bottles that come with it. You see in this picture the fuel bottle is faded out. That's a advertising picture that will it indicates that you have to get the fuel bottle separately. Now I have two of them here. I have this MSR 33 ounce fuel bottle. The bottle itself, which is the dead weight, is about a half a pound. And when full, this has about 2 pounds of fuel in it. I have a smaller bottle, which is about a third the size. It holds 11 fluid ounces, and it's about a quarter pound. It's about 4 ounces. So you're talking about 2.5 pounds for the larger container, about a quarter pound, a half a pound when full, actually closer to a pound now that I think of it. About a pound when it's full for the smaller container. Now, of course, that's kind of meaningless unless we talk about how long does it last. And from my notes, I haven't used this for quite some time, but I've looked through my notes, and it takes about 2 fluid ounces per meal when you're cooking for 2 or 3 people. So this bottle would last 5 days. This other one would last maybe 15 days out on the trail, so 15 or 16. So that'd be pretty substantial. But you would, if you were on a longer trip, you would have to refill it. It does need to use a windscreen and a reflector for best results. I'll show a picture of those with my next stove choice, the one that I use most commonly now. But that's needed, of course, to keep the wind from blowing the flame out and to kind of reflect some of the heat back in. Now, of course, it's just a burner, so we have to also talk about mess kits, and I'll get to that in a little while. So now, let's talk about the ESBIT stove. I have a couple of them. They use solid fuel. So first, let me hold up the fuel. This is an ESBIT solid fuel tablet. It weighs about a half an ounce. It does have some packaging, but packaging is not a major weight concern. You have to carry it out, carry in, carry out rules. But it does not add it doesn't add much dead weight at all. And I carried about more than 40 of these with me when I went on my long section hike. I didn't cook every night, so I actually came back with quite a few of them, but it wasn't a big deal at a half ounce each. And that is good for a meal. So it's, it's a quarter of the weight of the liquid fuel to get the same job done. The fuel tablet itself, it takes about 9 minutes to boil up. I didn't actually say how much on this slide, but um, 2 cups of water, because that's typically what you're going to need when you're cooking. And it takes about 9 minutes to do that. The fuel tab itself is good for about 12 or 13 minutes, so I typically will heat up a little more water after I've used some water for rehydrating my meal, and then I let the tab burn out and I heat up a little more water for cleaning up and that sort of thing. It also needs a windscreen and a reflector for best results. It doesn't come with that. The Whisper Light comes with that, and I actually had to use the Whisper Light one with my ESBIT stoves. So that's just another concern. When we're talking about weight, we have to consider everything that comes with it. Now, there's 2 types of ESBIT stoves. There is the, what I call it, the original or the classic, which is really just a little box. It's like a little metal box, a Sucrex box or something like that, and you open it up, and you put the fuel tablet in here, light it up. You do have to have a kettle. I'm going to grab a kettle here, place this on top of it, and you can basically boil up water with this. Okay, so that's how that works. Like I said, they don't advertise that it needs a windscreen or a reflector. The reflector's a part underneath, the windscreen goes around it. But I just found it's not effective. It can't boil up water from, say, room temperature up to boiling very effectively at all if you don't have that windscreen there. Little tip here is when you are boiling water, if you're taking it directly out of the stream, it's going to be very cold. So if you have water with you that you've been hiking with all day, better to use that. The other type is a cook set. And here's the cook set, and you can see it there in the picture in use. It nestles. I've got basically the water holds 2 cups of water again, and this is the little stove. And I got really excited when I bought this. You take the tablet out, put it in here, light it up. I got really excited when I first bought this because my thought was, well, this is cool. Look at that, it all fits together nicely, and it's going to boil it out real nice. I don't need a windscreen. Well, yeah, I was disappointed. I do need a windscreen with it, or it's got the same shortcoming as the other one, is that it won't boil up water. But it weighs about 1/2 pound. You can see, I'm sorry, the marks aren't in this picture very well, but I'm comparing the 2 sets. The cook set's about 1/2 pound. The original with a pot to boil water in, you have to consider that because functionally you want to compare apples with apples. That's closer to almost 1 pound there. Maybe that's 3/4 of a pound, a little bit more than 3/4 of a pound. Back when I took those pictures, I hadn't reinforced the markings on my scale like I had for the weighing the big 3 a few days ago. So that's what I have. Now, one other warning: despite the hype, these fuel tablets, the advertisers say they burn clean. Well, I guess it's your definition of clean. They burn sterile, I guess, but they did not burn clean. When you're done, you've really got to have like a handy wipe or something, or some water and soap and some leaves or something, because there is a nasty chemical residue that's on the bottom of the pot, because this is the part that's being burned. And to keep your gear clean and keep that gunk off all your stuff, you've really got to clean it after use. So that's just something to know about it. So now let's talk about mess kits. Mess kit is basically your cooking pots and pans. The mess kit pot that I showed you earlier, where is it? It's somewhere around here. Yikes, with a cover for it. This green thing in here is just a cup. With a cover that is needed. You cover it in order to retain the heat. And that's needed with the original stove. It's actually needed with the whisper light also. You need something with the whisper light. So the whisper light's getting heavier and heavier. And not only is it a dead weight of the fuel bottles, but you do have to include this. There's also, depending on how you're cooking, you could use a bowl and a frying pan. I have two sets. The first set is my nice, this is all integrated by the way, the kettle goes inside here, and basically when you store it, it's only this big. This is my old Boy Scout mess kit, and what I love about it is its sturdiness. What I don't love about it is that it does weigh a full pound with everything. And when I'm using the ESBIT cook set, typically I don't need this at all, but sometimes there are things I do like to cook on a trail, especially if it's a shorter trip, where it would be really nice to have a pan to cook stuff in. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I had cooked some Spam. If you're from Hawaii, I guess you love it. If you're from anywhere else, you might not. But it's great on the trail. And for that, Darlene went out and found at Walmart this little part of a mess kit here. It's really cheap. It's really light. And it came with a pot, but the pot was just too small to be useful. The pot only held a cup or a cup and a half as opposed to 2 full cups. Actually, that other one that I had holds a whole quart. This is one of those cases. You can see, by the way, where the residue, I couldn't get it all off, but that's, what happens with these solid fuel tablets. This is one of these cases where this was a cheap $5 item, and it weighs almost nothing. It's less than a half a pound, maybe 5 or 6 ounces, but it gets the job done. It is fantastic, and when it finally wears out, I can toss it. It was $5. So that's one of a good example of when you just don't have to spend a lot of money on all your equipment. There are instances where you can actually get by with something much less. The next thing for me to talk about is briefly is just the utensils. Not much to say about those. I have some, kind of heavy duty plastic ones. Just don't forget to pack them. It's really tough to be out there and realize you got to eat with your hands. So just remember that. Cups. I showed you a couple cups. Here's the cup that came with that Walmart mess kit. Yeah, it's literally exactly a cup, so it's good for measuring. And finally, I had mentioned that I got a Nalgene bottle, which I used for rehydrating. Sometimes I just didn't want to rehydrate in this container. I didn't want to deal with the cleanup mess that I'd have to go through with this. I mean, obviously I had to clean it up when I had it in here, but because I'd be using that for boiling more water for just general cleanup, so I needed a separate thing to rehydrate food, and I just found the Nalgene bottle was a pretty good one, and actually I can use it as a reserve water bottle during the day when I'm not cooking. It holds 16 ounces of water there. So that's what I use when I'm out on the trail. So cooking gear, very complicated. Complicated because there's a lot of choices. I mean, they all basically do the same thing. They provide you with a heat source. There you have it. Just wanted to make a quick addendum to talking about the ESBIT fuel tablets. I forgot to mention that, first of all, the tablets are hard to light. They take a few seconds under a good lighter, and by the way, you should get the lighters with the long necks on them. That just keeps your fingers from burning. But it takes a good 5 or 10 seconds to light them, so that if you have a lighter that's good for, X number of cigarette lights, I hope you don't smoke though, a lot of people do on the trail, it's going to be a lot fewer of these tablets that you can light with it before you run out of fuel in that. The second thing is they are hard to come by. It's a less popular form of fuel. I grab them whenever I can. They can't be sent through U.S. mail, so you got to get them delivered specially to you. So whenever I'm at a an outdoor store, Kittery Trading Post, something like that, and I see a package of them, I'll grab some. Um, Another reason that I'm considering going to the Jet Boil.